When I was 7 years old, I was diagnosed with celiac disease, and my entire world turned upside down. Up until this point, I had become literate in so many things. Although I was young, I had always been a fast learner. Now, because of my diagnosis, I had to become literate in celiac disease and all things gluten-free. To be literate in something, one must know as many aspects of that thing as possible. In the case of celiac disease, there are 3 key points needed to obtain the goal of literacy. Those things being what celiac disease is, what gluten is, and how to live without gluten. First step into this literacy journey addresses what celiac disease is. Celiac disease is a genetic autoimmune disease in which one cannot properly process gluten and thus cannot consume gluten. I discovered I had celiac after my mom's diagnosis. I remember walking the aisles of Winn-Dixie, my mom shocked and upset about the sheer lack of food she could eat. The hardest part of celiac is its effects on one's body. When someone with celiac eats gluten, the body literally attacks itself, damaging the villi in one's small intestines. This is the main symptom of celiac, but the full list of afflictions is endless. The celiac community is very small. Only 1 in 100 people have a confirmed diagnosis of celiac disease. This tight community can be supportive and helpful, but also harmful. Misinformation can spread like wildfire, hurting desperate people looking for answers along the way. The most common false claim is that one can grow out of celiac. This is not true by any stretch of the imagination. If it were true, I would be able to sit and enjoy pizza and pasta with my friends in the cafeteria instead of eating my pre-made meals at my desk in my dorm room. The next step on the literacy ladder is knowing the enemy, gluten. Gluten is found in the endosperm of cereal grains such as wheat, barley, and rye. Gluten is made of the proteins gliadine and glutenine. When these 2 proteins are kneaded or mixed, they form bonds, giving bread and other baked goods their structure. So many times I have seen a smug look of superiority from others. They think that if I just don't eat gluten, I should be fine. How is that so hard? The problem is that gluten, besides for being in bread, cake, pizza, etc., tends to be a cheap filler in many products. I remember the utter drop in the pit of my stomach one time as I turned a bag of dried seaweed over and saw that it contained wheat, right after I had eaten a piece. Hidden gluten is everywhere, from lunch meat to soy sauce to even toothpaste. By also being a protein, gluten tends to stick to everything, causing cross-contamination in its wake. The last step in this uphill battle of creating a literacy of celiac is knowing how to live with it. The first being able to know how to cook. This was the first thing I did when I learned of my celiac. I remember crying, wondering how on earth I was ever going to be able to eat the rest of my life. My mom simply replied, "You'll learn to cook." When I first began, I always had to stand on my tiptoes to see above the pot, needing a step stool to even attempt to see what I was cooking. The second is research. Cooking every meal from scratch every day can be very tedious. Thus, being able to do research on safe places to eat is extremely important, especially if one wants to travel anywhere but their home. Seeing, hearing, feeling a new destination is one of my favorite things to do, and eating new foods that I know are safe go right along with it. The last but not least task needed in your life with celiac is reading labels. It may seem ridiculous to read labels of products that either say or should be gluten-free, but there have been countless times I've been thankful I did. The ire and frustration I felt after reading the back of a bag of frozen corn that may contain wheat is indescribable. I had to become literate in celiac at a very young age. At the time, it seemed like the end of the world. I could no longer stop by a fast food restaurant and eat a greasy, delicious hamburger or eat birthday cake at a friend's party. But because of my celiac, it ended up making me a better person. Because I started cooking so young, I developed a skill set not many others had. I actually ended up competing on Top Chef Junior, utilizing my ability to cook on a national level. I also learned how to advocate for myself and my celiac. Up until my diagnosis, I had always been a relatively shy person. The idea of speaking up for my needs was a tough pill to swallow. But because I learned to speak up, I can now speak up for others too. Being able to help people on both a local and national level has since been a great passion of mine. Learning hidden gluten words is something I'm always on the hunt for. Gluten comes in many forms, and those tricky words hide in plain sight, ready to pounce on unexpected celiac disease sufferers. Although I had been able to follow the ins and outs of the celiac world, it took me a long time to learn a particular part of it. Baking gluten-free terrified me for the longest time. It was my white whale. Without the structure of gluten, baking gluten-free can be extremely difficult. I remember the first time I tried making biscuits, and they came out terribly. I think they may have been flatter than a pancake. After that, the idea of attempting to bake again was non-existent. It wasn't until Cup for Cup Gluten-Free Flour Company contacted me to develop recipes for them that I'd even thought of giving baking a second chance. After that, things just clicked. I remember the first time a batch of cookies using my own recipe worked. The aroma of the butter and sugar, their light golden brown color, and especially the smile on a friend's face after first bite. Now, I bake as often as I possibly can, spreading the joy of gluten-free baking as much as possible. My journey to the literacy of the gluten-free world has been arduous, but rewarding. I help myself and my gluten-free community to eat safely and deal with celiac disease knowledgeably and confidently. Thanks for watching!